Hello, everybody. This is Jon Paolone. Is that right?
Paolone.
Paolone. That was my next guest. He is the faculty advisor for one of our oldest groups, the group University of Alabama, Birmingham. He's one of the few people who has graduated as a student from the group and then gone on to become the faculty advisor for the group. And it's my pleasure to let him have the stage. Jon.
All right, thanks. Well, by the way, can everybody hear me? Is this projecting? All right. Yes? Okay, good. All right. I tend to project normally anyway, so. And yeah, so what JT was just telling you about is true. And just I'm going to be talking about the importance of institutional memory. I'm actually not even going to use slides. I'm a little old-fashioned that way. And so I'm just going to talk about some stuff. So the summary of what could be called institutional memory is a collective set of facts, concepts, experiences, and know-how held by a group of people that transcends the individual, and it requires transmission. And if it sounds like I got that from Wikipedia, it's because I did. Right before this, actually. But I wanted to have something more official than what my a supposition of what institutional memory was. So I'll give you a little history. The group was started about fall of '96 as known as the Birmingham Free Thought Society, or BFS. I'll probably use those terms interchangeably. It is now the Secular Student Alliance at UAB, and I'll get to the change eventually. So BFS, Birmingham Free Thought Society, was started generally by about three main people: Adam Butler, who's a friend, acquaintance of mine; Michelle Michael, who's dated for 2 years; and then Chris McDougall, who is a former roommate of mine, also considered a good friend. And he's very involved up in Long Island in free thought causes at his community college. So, and the relationship is important also for later on. So, this group was created before I was around at UAB. I was in the Air Force at the time, and then came to UAB around 2000. Really started developing more of a free-thinking interest, getting away from my Catholic roots. You know, somewhere around that period, 2000, 2001, 2002. So, the first advisor was a woman named Mike Wilson. She goes by Mike. Her real name's Michelle, but she was the head of women's studies at UAB. Still there as a very important professor. Very involved with feminist causes, abortion clinic escorting. Really great woman, very soft-spoken. And in fact, what Adam was emailing me when I was collecting some facts about the old days of BFS was that she once helped save the group from having their skulls cracked in by the Montgomery police when that group was protesting Roy Moore's infamous Ten Commandments monument. I don't know if you guys remember that. Some of you do. I see some heads nodding, so good. So, but yeah, so she was a good advisor for what I was told, and had a good way with words, and was really, really calm. So, but the group got started. People started. I'm going to give you a brief history, by the way. The group was started early on. Of course, it's the first of its kind at UAB. Very few in the Deep South. Started putting some flyers up that says, "You're not religious? Well, I'll be damned. There's a group for you." And started and just took off from there. And in the early days, Adam was telling me that some guy or persons would go around and rip the flyers off not even an hour after they're posted up. So again, this is stuff you have to deal with even at a public school, but if you're in the Deep South, it's pretty religious. So, but group grew exponentially. You know, the first meeting they had 20, then the mailing list went to 50 and 100, and then plateaued about 200. So it went really quickly. One of the gimmicks, if you will, that they got to get in members was back in about '97 or so, when South Park had just started. The dorms did not carry Comedy Central at UAB, so they got a VCR, an ancient thing, VCR, and played some recorded episodes of South Park, had some pizza, and got easily 100 people in a room. So, and then when Adam asked how many people there were free thinkers, almost no hands went up. They were just there to watch South Park and eat pizza. And this was back in, like I said, in the early days of South Park, when it was real controversial, getting a lot of buzz on. But, I mean, that created some sparks, some interest. That's one of the early things the group did. And they eventually went with the tradition of alternating free thought type activities with fun stuff, such as that. So, Adam ended up graduating about 1999, but he spent 3 out of his 4 years there searching for younger members to make a transition. He was consciously looking out for the younger folks to transition into leadership roles, and found some officers, but 2 months into it, they all decided it was too much work for them and eventually quit. So, languished for about 6 months, but the bank account did not go away. Still had money in it. Adam still had the posters, the materials, the tabling stuff. So then we get to the point where a guy named Will McGriff arrived, He came in to work at our School of Public Health there. UAB has a huge health sciences area. And he was interested in starting an atheist group and being the faculty advisor for it. Turns out, well, hey, there's the framework already in place, known as the Birmingham Free Thought Society. So it picked back up with him. So it never really died out. It was just a 6-month hiatus, as he liked to call it. So that puts it in about the 2000 realm. Back at their early days in the Orientation Expo, they get placed right next to the Baptist group. You know, might have to deal with that, maybe a little jovial heckling and stuff like that, but usually got along pretty well with groups, other religious groups as a whole on campus. And excuse me. And also about this time, you know, when Adam was telling me that because of his status as a student at that time, sometimes he'd become into this he realized he was in a bit of a bubble, and that he was didn't realize how he was affecting the outside community of UAB. So then he was starting to realize that there's an outlet for this group. There's a need, a desire to have a secular, non-theist group, not just at UAB, but in the community as a whole, in Birmingham. And so I don't know if he picked the name consciously, Birmingham Free Thought Society, for that reason, to separate itself from student groups, but that's how it became known as more of a local free thought group that happened to meet on campus, just happened to use university facilities, but it was really effective in that way. We get a lot of folks out to meetings who were not used to this, had no outlet for this. You know, they've been surrounded by churches. There's 30 churches in every corner, but there's no atheist group and secular group in Birmingham until this point. So it became very useful. That another one of the early activities was the group sponsored Ellen DeGeneres' coming out episode. Our local, I can't remember, this is again early 90s, a little before my time, but our local ABC affiliate blocked the episode from airing. Some of the older folks remember that. And the one where she came out of the closet as lesbian. And the Free Thought Society co-sponsored the event. They showed the episode on the big screens in the Civic Center downtown and got lots of people. This is something that the founders of the group never envisioned they were getting involved with, this outsider community group, because that was definitely not campus-oriented, you can tell. What really hit home for the connection between the student group and the university as a whole. A little side note, by the way, UAB is also colloquially known as the university that ate Birmingham, because it is just growing massively, and it's one of the main things that city of Birmingham is known for. You know, previously it was known for civil rights injustices and overcoming that, and big iron and steel industry, but now UAB and its related healthcare is the main economic driver of Birmingham. In fact, it's the state's largest employer. So, that being said, but what really set off the connection between the greater community and the university community was back in January of '98. Eric Rudolph bombed the abortion clinic on the south side of Birmingham, and that is right off campus. I mean, literally a street not even as wide as this room separates from off campus to on campus. And of course that killed security guard, severely injured a nurse. My dad was actually working 2 blocks away at the time that day, but that's what really brought home the connection, and also to get the group going from not just free thought and fun stuff, but a little more activism type things. And that's the Roy Moore story came in after that, from what I told you. So then it became they became more interested in activism and really doing stuff with the local community at that time. Also, something that Adam was telling me that I didn't even know about was that he sent all these reports and press releases out to, he said CFI in there, but I think he meant Freedom from Religion Foundation, and even sent a couple links to, which I can give you later, the Freedom from Religion's archive pages where all these old press reports and stuff are collected. They were published in Free Inquiry Press and was used as a template for a starting guide of how to start a group. So, so they really did a lot of good work in there and provided a template for many other secular groups to go by. So, and that's still on the archives. Again, I can definitely give you those websites afterwards if you ask me. So, in a sense, Free Thought Society at that time functioned as a local chapter of the Alabama Free Thought Association, which is in itself a state chapter of the FFRF. AFA owns some property at Lake Hypatia, and they host the annual Free Thought Advance, not a retreat. In fact, it was just 2 weeks ago, I believe, or a week ago. And we brought folks like Annie Laurie Gaylor in, Dan Barker to do some speaking, some debates back in those, again, those days, the early 90s, or late 90s, sorry, early 2000s. Some of the more recent activities that we've done include hosting an HPV panel back when that was really big in the news with a couple scientists who do research on the vaccine at our university, and a Catholic woman who was against the mandatory implementation of that vaccine. Had a panel discussion, give the reasons, had some folks ask questions from the audience. I think it came out pretty well in favor of the scientists, obviously. We've also done several debates, such as your standard topics, does God exist? We've done secularism versus Christianity, which provides a better moral foundation. We've done Is He Risen? On the resurrection of Christ, and true or false, and the evidence for and against. Most recent one was secularism versus theism, which is better for society. Roughly was the title of that. We have all these have been pretty well attended. 50 to 300 people on average. So usually closer to the 200, 300 realm is what we've had. And sometimes for these debates, we've involved students as well, so that student members of the BFS, now SSA, can come in and share their, can take part as a debater, not just a watching. They can be an active involvement. And in fact, one of them, our students, Kristen Ellis, she really got in some good zingers to the Christian side in the morality debate and got a round of applause from the whole audience. So it's made a great impression on there. We've also done stuff like such as chalking on the campus green, asking a free thinker table, done watching Monty Python episodes, just more internal group stuff. We had a Methodist teacher come and explain about why he teaches evolution. A Methodist, not preacher, but a person who happens to be Methodist and is also teaching science, and he teaches the teaching of evolution to other science teachers. Well, it's really meta sounding, but so it's good to have a person who comes from a Christian background to speak on the importance of teaching evolution. So still trying to build those bridges with other groups on campus. One of the main groups we've been involved with was Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ. I know they're pretty much everywhere. You guys know about them. So, but we've hosted a couple of debates with them, but we don't want to get too complacent in just going to them as our go-to debaters every time, because that gets a little stale. So we're looking to open up some lines with the Muslim group, which is very hugely active on our campus. And there's a new group called Better Together, I think, or Better Tomorrow. It's an interfaith group. So we're gonna. That's kind of in a slow stage right now. We're trying to get more involved with them. So one other thing about. And also, let me go back to what I was talking earlier about the relationships I had and how I know there's 3 people who started the BFS. That's important because that really helped continue the transition from when I was a student and to when I became a faculty advisor. Having those relationships really helped the transmission of information, being able to just call up somebody or email somebody and say, hey, I need a little bit of history of the group, can you give it to me? And they'd willingly oblige, or talk to somebody in person. So I can get those ideas of what was going on in the group before I was there, and to pass that on down to people who will come after me. So the transmission line, which is key in institutional memory, was really strong, I guess, because of those interpersonal relationships. So sometimes I do tend to wonder how the group will remember the history after I'm gone. Not to say I'm really this big important guy, but just that I don't think the lines of transmission has been as strong as they could be. Trying to get the current officers more active. I guess it's been tough because of the summertime, but I think they will rise to the occasion again and be able to pass on this information. What I plan to do is type up an email and summarizing a lot of this, what I'm talking about today, and also the video, can save that once it's eventually posted, and give that to all the officers so that they can have a record of this, and pass it down to future generations. Kind of like when Native Americans used to do their oral history, pass it down to future, except this will be, it'll be more lasting, and it'll be more, you can fact check it because it'll be actual data, video recordings, typed emails, written words, presentations, tabling stuff, that kind of stuff can get passed down and make it more effective for the groups to survive if they do take a 6-month hiatus, as it were, with a less active membership. So, and sometimes what was really needed, that both Adam and I have come to the conclusion, is just 1 or 2 really, really super involved people to take charge of the group, round up the troops, do a lot of the work yourself, even if it's thankless. Gordon back there comes to mind. He's done a lot with his group in Tuscaloosa for AAA. Kenny Flagg done a lot with his group at University of North Dakota. I mean, there's plenty of examples here at this conference today, but just getting those 1 or 2 folks to just be the cogs, the stalwarts, if you will, of the group to get things going. I mean, I can't remember how many times I've had to write something down, light a fire, send an email blast out to the officers saying, okay, this should be a student's responsibility. Let's get this going, guys. I don't need to be doing so much as an advisor. I want this to be student-led and let myself take a background role. So, hence we don't have any students from my group here today. I'm really trying to rally them up, and for whatever reason, cost or time off work or something, they just couldn't make it. But I'm hoping next year the CFI, SSA, other conferences will have a much better student representation from the SSA chapter at UAB. Okay. One thing to note about institutional memory is that it can be ingrained to the point where it gets to be dogmatic, in a sense, where it's hard to challenge something that was once thought to be correct once you have some information. Can anyone give me an example of maybe a group where that might take place? Don't all speak at once.
The church.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Yes, religion. And so that's one of the things we want to avoid is becoming dogmatic, in a sense, and doing things the way we've been doing them because we've been doing them, and it just becomes a repeated process. You don't challenge yourself and look for other ways to do it. Many people like to use that overtrodden phrase, think out of the box, but in a sense it's true, though. You really have to think of new ways of doing things, new ways of tackling an issue, of recruiting, just of making fun things to do for the members. So not instead of holding business-style meetings all the time where we just go over an agenda, working those fun things, do a nature hike. We did a hike out to this great state park near where we live. That was something the group had not done in ages, at least since I've been there. So that's one of the things we try to do new, to challenge our ways. And that brings me to the name change. It went from Birmingham Free Thought Society, where it was for, 15 plus years, to now it's the Secular Student Alliance at UAB, or SSA at UAB, or just the SSA chapter at UAB. It was previously affiliated with the group, and now it's a branded affiliate. That change came about in about spring of this year. I think a lot of the officers and myself were at a pub after the secularism versus theism in society debate, and it seemed to just come out of nowhere for me. But a lot of them were saying we want to change the nature of the group, the focus of the group, the name of the group to Secular Student Alliance. I was against it, to be honest with you. I was against it because, to me, the Birmingham Free Thought Society had the history to it, had some cachet, that name cachet, recognition on campus and in the broader circles, and I also liked the mission of it being a local group for people, not just student-oriented. Of course, it'd be student-centered, but having the name Secular Student Alliance might turn off some other older members who might want to come and share their free thought experiences versus Birmingham Free Thought Society, when folks of all ages are welcome. In either case, both are welcome. It's more of a semantic thing, but as advisor, I said, you know what, I'm going to step back and let the officers decide what to do. So they end up going with the name change, and after much consternation and voting and debating on Facebook and email and otherwise, so they changed it, and that's fine. So I wanted to let them make that decision. And so that's one area, I guess, the example of not being so ingrained and set in your ways, as they wanted to take a new direction, so there it went. So that's just how the institution, the general concept of the institutional memory, how it goes, as far as that goes. Again, passing down that information, making sure that that this info, this data, this history, all this great set of facts and experiences are gleaned from one group to the next group to the next group, and so on down the line, so that the any kind of group, whether it's a student group, Secular Student Alliance, or whatever group, can continue to flourish, and people can know their history, where they came from, and to where they're going. So that about wraps mine up, and I'd like to go into questions if you guys have any, or comments. I know that might have been really quick, but...
I'll hold you to 2 questions, John.
Was it?
2 questions.
Okay.
So earlier in the documentation section, which was aimed at for officers and by officers, it was suggested to have a how-to packet,
yep.
Sort of administrative trivia, how to get the next crop of officers familiar and very quickly, get to prevent any kind of shaky transitions.
Yep.
How can faculty advisors facilitate that, and what other beyond the sort of day-to-day, this is how you run the club, what kind of information do you think the advisors can provide as a sort of, they're there longer, they're not just with each administration.
Right. What kind of information can they provide besides the day-to-day operations of running the club? Well, one thing is just, I guess, what I've talked about, a little bit of the history. Sometimes just having the context, having the right context. Usually it's been me who's contacted the local newspapers to get a little press coverage for some of our debates. So he's probably going to recognize my name, but passing that information down, media contacts. For instance, there was a guy, I don't know if you guys know Larry Taunton. He's with, no, you probably wouldn't know him unless you lived in Birmingham, but he's with the Fixed Point Foundation, a Christian group who has brought Christopher Hitchens, in fact he was good friends with Christopher Hitchens, and Richard Dawkins into town. He contacted me just the other day out of the blue, wanting to do a survey of why people go from religious to atheist as part of his PhD project. And so he emailed me out of the blue just because I was the one he was most familiar with. So that's pretty important, having that information, but definitely a set of contacts, I guess. A good resources, such as Liz and JT up here, resources with CFI, with AHA. That's about, I guess, does that answer your question? Is that what I'm getting at? Okay.
It's the benefit that you bring by surviving each individual 4-year batch of students.
Yeah. Again, just have I think that sums it up. But if not, I can answer more afterwards. So one more. Yes.
Are your events open to the public, and if so, how can we find out when the next one takes place?
All our events are open to the public, and I will be happy to give you a business card or some information. That goes for anybody here, and we would love to have you come down for any of them. Or there's even meetings. Meetings generally, unless stated otherwise, are open to the public. We've had some Christian and Catholic interlopers at there, and we always try to treat them with respect, even though we might be saying some pretty good jokes about religion and stuff. But yes, everything's open to the public, except for certain things like officer meetings and such, and you guys are always welcome if you happen to be in Birmingham. So.
More round of applause for John. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.